You know, it's really interesting because when I think about that question, how I came to believe and what's my testimony, it's still unfolding in my life. And I'll say this: at a young age, maybe somewhere before first grade or in that category, I was sexually abused. And I didn't know how to process, I didn't understand it, but it made me respond to life differently in this sense. I I tried to do a lot of the things that would make me appear to be masculine to overcompensate for the things that I wasn't doing. I wasn't playing sports. I didn't know how to play sports. I didn't really get that. So I became the guy that was hanging out that could talk to the girls. So in my community, you were a great sportsman, you had a lot of brothers, or you were a great guy that could talk to the ladies. You had to have a handle if you wanted to be cool on the block. So mine was he could talk to that person. If anybody could talk, what they call it, you can rap. Yeah, he can rap. He's good. I'm not talking about rap like we have it today in hip hop. I'm talking about being able to just have a great conversation and win the female over. So he got rap. But all of those things, when I started to unpack them, went back to the fact that I had been abused and it was never processed, never dealt with, and it also had an edge. So when it comes to my self-esteem, it was in the basement, although I appeared to be one way, but my self-esteem was over here at the bottom, and I was doing these other things to compensate for that. So you had to build a wall around who you were, at least how I was, so that you never let your friends in on that. So I only started to talk about what I just shared to you in the last 3 years. I shared it with my wife because it wasn't something you sit with the guys and say, yeah, hey, I was abused. But until we own where we've been, we can't get where we want to go. And that doesn't mean that it's going to be pretty. So there's a lot of grieving and some stuff that I had to process to really pull it out and unpack. Oh, wow. So instead of being a victim and seeing yourself as a victim, I saw myself for the blame. So a lot of stuff was starting to happen. I mean, I joined the military at 18 because I thought that I would surely die in New York City and or end up in prison. So I wanted the government to pay for my mother to have a funeral for me because I was certain I would be dead. And joining the Army guaranteed a free burial and a check for my mother. I didn't join the Army because I was smart. I joined the Army because everybody else around me was dying. I lived in Harlem, Central Harlem, Inwood, Dykeman, with some stints in the Bronx. And at the end of the day, when I arrived in the military, I was like, racism. I'm living in Arizona. And I don't know if it was all racism as much as in my mind because they were not of the complexion I was. Everything was automatically racism. You don't like me because of my skin color, and I don't like you because of your skin color. And I'm 18 years old, and I know you don't like me. I didn't like myself. I didn't even love myself. So I had an encounter at 19 which sent me spiraling. And I said, wow, this is the day or this is the year that I will certainly die in the military. I was totally rebellious to the system. And I found myself in a small church in Arizona, Baptist church at 19. I remember sitting in the church, arriving late, sitting in the back, and it was so crowded that they'd bring out extra chairs next to the pew. And the guy that brought me there, he said, oh, we're going to go to church. I didn't go to church because I had an idea I was going to meet God. I went there because I respected what the guy said. Let's go to church. So I go to church. I'm 19. And I remember sitting there as clear as I can remember where I was at, what time it was. I can't remember the message. I can't remember the messenger. But I remember sitting there and I was crying my eyes out. I'm like, wow. I don't know what he talked about today, but I know at that moment he hit home and all I could do was cry, cry, cry. And it's at the end of the service and I'm sitting here and this man is inviting us to come forward. And I'm like, I don't know anybody in this church. I came with this one guy. I'm certainly not getting up. And I sat there. And it seemed like eternity that I sat there. And the next thing I know, I'm walking up. I don't know what I went up there for. And I'm crying. I know the place is packed. I can't give you a face. And I'm crying. I'm blurring. My eyes are blurred. The snot is running. I'm crying. I'm 19 years old. And such a peace came on me like never before in my life. And that's my introduction to Jesus. And they said something, something. At the end of the day, I got baptized. Not at that moment, but they put me on a course to be baptized. And I used to love to dance. I still love to dance. And my biggest thing was I wasn't involved in alcohol, but I would dance. And in the military on Sundays, you could go to this place and dance. You know, it was a club. And so I said, maybe I shouldn't go there. Or maybe I should. And so when I did go, obviously I went, I saw people from the church and they were there dancing. And I said, okay, it must be all right. But I didn't get instructed. I didn't get Bible study. And I didn't know how to be taught. I wasn't taught. So after a while of going to the club on Sunday, after going to church on Sunday, and it wasn't a bad place, but I wasn't getting the meat that I needed to grow. And I gauged my relationship on what I saw out of others in there. So I said, they're here, and I saw them there, so this can't be bad. And I missed the whole growth opportunity. So I understand how important it is to stay connected during the week with the gospel, and whether that is Bible study, whether that's just hanging out having pizza, or just shooting the breeze with a group of people that you're on a like mind. And if you happen to want to go somewhere and dance, you know you're not going to stay there because there are other things that are drawing you, and God wants your attention. So I said all that to say that I missed that really expanding time, and I fell back into what we call backsliding days, which I didn't know I was backsliding. I just said I'm a Christian. Why? Because I gave my life to Christ. I got baptized, but I wasn't following or being taught, and that went on for a number of years. And I got back on track maybe 18 years ago, and I was standing in church, this particular church, and I told my family before we went, I don't want to know anybody. I don't want to join the church, and we're not staying longer than when he says the benediction. We're out. And I'm literally, my family's sitting on the couch. We're having this, no, it's not any discussion. I'm telling them before we get in the car, this is what's going to happen. And mind you, this is after my wife has been proud of me to go to this church for like 3 or 4 months. And she's going for a couple of weeks. I'm going to church because I need those church people to know that that woman has a husband, those kids have a father, and that's it. And we would go, and I would sit there. Preachers finish, let's go. People trying to speak to me as I'm headed to the door. Let's go, let's go, let's go. And one Sunday, I don't know, but God knew, they opened the doors to the church and they said, well, come on up. If you're here on Christian Experience, or you want to be baptized, or you're just looking for a church home. And I remember I jumped up, and I'm standing there, and my family's sitting on that row, and they're looking at me like, and they're looking at each other, and I'm like, come on, come on. And they're probably thinking, didn't he tell us we weren't? And it became authentic. I never went to sleep in church from that moment. I was never bored. And I hungered to follow the preacher in the teachings. Like, hey, I'm in here learning something. I ain't coming. You're going to be a pastor? You're going to do this? I'm like, yo, dude, I just need to save me and be a great father for my family. And God did the rest, man. You want to hear God's laughter? Tell him what you're going to do or what you're not going to do. So it took me on this journey, and I'm glad about it. And those experiences that I've had have helped me to shape how I share the gospel, how to leave room for differences of opinion without necessarily disagreeing with the person, that we can still agree to disagree and grow. Because if we don't do that, then we're just like, we're marching this way and we're marching. And I remember the scripture says we are one in the body of Christ. So the people that have a different dialect or a different language, and they're saying God, and they're saying it in a way that I don't understand it, does that mean that they're saying it wrong? No. I need to just understand that we're one in the body, and let not our differences separate us. But it's all right to have a difference, but let's not be disagreeable. That's the short answer in my journey to Christ. And I love it. I wouldn't trade it for the world.